The crowd had been arranged carefully. The chairs were lined up in rows, perfectly aligned under the canopy. The bright sun hit the outside of the white tent, turning every shiny pair of sunglasses inside into tiny mirrors. It was graduation day. Nora Wagner had quietly arrived and taken her seat. All she held in her hand was a program brochure. Her face was blank, but her eyes were scanning the surroundings, registering every detail with the seriousness of a military drill. She had sat down in that chair at 7:15 a.m. Fourth row, marked Parent T. Wagner. Her son Thomas was going to take the stage as valedictorian. She had fought all year just to watch him from that spot. And no one, not the school board, not social status, not expensive perfume should be able to take that away from her. But someone did. When the two security guards came over, their words sounded like an order dressed up in politeness. "Ma'am, we're really sorry, but this section is for VIP families only. Could you please move to the back row?" Nora didn't say a word. She stood up, stepped back in silence. Inside the left pocket of her jacket, there was a piece of cloth no one had seen in years. She just touched it, a sign, a reminder. It wouldn't change what was going to happen that day, maybe, but 6 people who knew exactly what was going on had already entered the area, and their eyes were on her. She didn't want her son to notice a thing. Thomas was backstage, waiting in line with the other graduates. She could see him from afar. He stood tall. His gown was pressed. His expression was confident. He still thought his mom was sitting up front. And Nora didn't want to ruin that illusion. Because even if she wasn't in that seat, she was in every bit of his success. But someone didn't understand that. Dr. Helen Kruger, head of the sponsorship committee. As she walked by with her patterned silk scarf flowing, she gave Nora's old military jacket a dismissive glance and said, "People like that shouldn't be in the photo area." And from that moment, everything sped up. Nora was moved first to the 5th row, then the 8th, then the 10th. Just a few seat adjustments, they said. But she knew. This wasn't just about a chair. This was about being erased. Just like it had happened all those years ago. Nora used to be a young corporal in technical support training. Quiet, detail-oriented, the kind of person nobody noticed. Until one joint exercise, during a simulated raid on a building, when she took charge of all the civilian roles inside and stopped the team from making critical errors. That's when they noticed her. 6 young men, from a special unit. Men who didn't yet know how to trust, who didn't want to kneel to anyone, who were armored on the outside but hollow within. Nora didn't just keep them alive. She gave them direction, gave them focus, even gave them a name, Guide. Years later, those 6 had lost contact, but each of them had seen the announcement with Thomas's name, the date, the location, the program, and they had sent one single message to each other. She walked with us. Now we walk with her. That day, as the guards were removing the chair labeled with Nora's name, 6 men somewhere else had already begun walking. They wore ties. They were silent. But when they moved, even the wind seemed to shift. And none of the heads of security, school officials, or wealthy donors had any idea what these men truly represented. Not yet. There were giant screens set up on both sides of the stage. Cameras were recording every moment of the ceremony, but some moments were too quiet, too deep, and too heavy for cameras to catch. From Nora's spot in the 10th row, the lights lit up the stage, but left the lower rows in the shadows. Just like in life. But she knew those shadows. She had grown up in them. Ethan still hadn't seen her. Or maybe he had, but said nothing because he understood his mother's silence. Her patience, he felt her presence. Nora stared at the stage without blinking, like she wouldn't breathe until her son's name was called. And then, a slight movement at the very back of the crowd. First a single click, then the sound of rhythmic footsteps. A way of walking that stood out even on the grass. 6 men walking with steps that came not from their shoulders, but from their core. None of them had been introduced. None of them were on the guest list. But they were on a different list. A list only they knew about. A list opened in the name of a woman they owed a debt to, walking under a vow buried beneath 10 years of silence. The first to notice were the teachers, then a student, then a parent. Whispers spread. Who are they? Security? No, something more. Their clothes were simple, but their posture had military precision. Each one was different. One had dark skin, another was almost pale white. But their steps were in sync. Their eye lines, the way they scanned the area, the space between them when they stopped. Nothing was random. Nora saw them. and she gently placed her left hand on her chest right over the worn piece of fabric sewn into her jacket. Guide 6. She wasn't alone anymore. When they reached the front of the stage, no one dared to stop them. The announcer went quiet for a moment. The principal half rose from his seat, but sat back down. The sponsor families in the front row looked first at their phones, then at each other, trying to figure out what was happening. And right then, one of the men, the oldest-looking one, with gray hair swept back and a scar running along his face, pulled something from the inside of his jacket. A piece of green cloth, with a single word stitched on in worn thread, "Guide." He handed it to a stage assistant and spoke. "Today, we saw someone pushed away from the place they earned. But that woman once saved the lives of 6 men. She didn't give commands, but she led. She didn't wear a uniform, but she had our respect. And today, we're here to restore her honor." He pointed to the 10th row, to Nora. The crowd went silent. The students froze. Only a few minutes remained before Ethan's name was to be announced, but time was moving differently now. A new rhythm had started, woven inside the meaning of the moment. From backstage, Ethan saw what was happening, and he took his first step. He stepped down from the stage. He was looking at his mother. He wasn't holding a diploma, but he had the most important decision of his life written on his face. He walked up to the men, greeted them, and then went straight to his mother. Nora didn't stand. Her eyes were full, but no tears fell. Because for her, this moment wasn't a victory, it was a completion. Ethan came closer. He didn't kneel. He didn't hug. He simply reached out his hand and said, "We came here together." That moment, everyone standing began to applaud. At first, it was hesitant. Then it spread like a wave. Students, parents, teachers, they all stood. Some took photos. Some just stayed quiet. But everyone felt the weight of that moment. Dr. Kruger, meanwhile, remained frozen in her seat. Her jaw trembled slightly. That silk scarf no longer looked like a royal cape, it was just fabric. Because in that moment, everyone saw who truly carried the weight. Not the so-called authority, but the real effort behind it. Attention turned back to the stage. Ethan's name was announced. Thomas Ethan Wagner, valedictorian. But he was already there. Not on the stage, but at the center of truth. He hadn't walked up for a diploma but to stand tall in front of his mother. And no camera, no applause. Nothing would ever erase what they had done with that chair. When Ethan stepped up to the mic, the applause faded into a deep silence. No eyebrows raised. No eyes looked away. Everyone, absolutely everyone, wanted to know what he was about to say. He had a folded speech in his hand, but he placed it on the podium and didn't open it. He looked up and took a deep breath. In that moment, his voice wasn't strong because of the microphone, it echoed from within. "I'm not going to read the speech I prepared," he said, "because what happened here is more real than anything written. When I got here this morning, my mom was walking in front of me. She looked like an ordinary woman. A pair of worn-out boots, a faded jacket, standing tall but quiet. But I need to tell you this. That woman is the strongest person in this entire place right now." The crowd stirred with an instinctive murmur. Principal Kent shifted in his seat. Helen Kruger clutched her handbag tightly. Ethan continued, "For years, you ignored my mom. For her clothes, her silence, her last name. But you didn't know. She was the one who led the unit during Special Forces training. She could map a conflict zone without even looking at a map. She was the one who saved 6 men during a military drill. She was a leader. You just chose not to see her." A few students in the back started clapping. It spread like a wave. But Ethan raised his hand. He wanted silence. Because what he was about to say wasn't meant for applause, it was meant to be swallowed whole. "I'm this school's valedictorian. But I'm not here just because of test scores. I am here because of this woman's quiet support. The hands that typed on an old laptop every morning in the kitchen also made my breakfast. At night, while fixing a car engine, she told me about her dreams under the sound of the motor." No one interrupted him, because everyone understood this wasn't just a graduation, it was a reckoning. "Today, my mother was told that the front row seat wasn't for her. And you thought you gained something by taking that chair. But her steps had already moved ahead. Everyone who pushed her aside needs to understand this. She's not just my mom anymore. She's the silent architect of change. And whether you realize it or not, her mark can't be erased anymore." Ethan took a step back. His speech was over, but the impact he left behind was just beginning. People stood up. This time, without hesitation. The applause echoed. But the looks in their eyes were different now. Shame, respect, admiration. Some placed their hands over their jackets. Others bowed their heads. A few teachers turned away to hide their tears. Meanwhile, the 6 SEALs were still in place. But their eyes weren't just on Nora anymore, they were scanning the crowd. This town had begun to pay a debt it had stayed silent about for far too long. Years ago, at a training ground, dusty, windy, and quiet, Nora had met them for the first time. She had to prove herself. No one believed in her. What business did a civilian woman have with military intelligence? But in the second week, during a night drill, an unplanned emergency hit. Drone feeds were cut. The hostages in the simulation couldn't be extracted. The SEAL team froze. Their leader, Hartley, couldn't decide. That's when Nora pointed the way. "The west gate isn't locked," she said. "We checked it." "No, you missed it. Look at the soil. Those 3 marks in front of the door. The gate was last opened from the inside this morning." The men did what she said. The hostages were pulled out. The drill was completed successfully. And that night, one of the SEALs pulled out a worn piece of cloth from his bag. He showed her the word he had stitched into it: guide. "Let this be the name for the path you showed us," he said. Nora didn't smile. She didn't need to, because she already knew what success looked like. Now, that path was being redrawn right in the middle of a graduation ceremony. A silence that had started with a chair had turned into a truth that made hundreds stand to their feet. Nora was still in the 10th row, but now, everyone's eyes were there. Ethan returned to his mother's side. He leaned down, fixed her jacket, and whispered 3 words into her ear. "You were always ahead." When the ceremony ended, the crowd still hadn't dispersed. People stood around in groups, sneaking glances at Nora. She wasn't just a lone woman anymore, she was a story to be told. No one had clapped for her, she was a revolution without applause. Principal Kent's voice had trembled when he put down the microphone. Bellamy, on the other hand, was doing everything he could to act like he had never even existed. But just as much as nothing had changed, nothing could stay the same anymore. As Nora sat quietly next to Ethan, the SEAL team began to move. One by one, they walked over to her. None of them hugged her. None of them said much. But in their eyes, just like in the old camps, there was one thing: respect. Hartley was the first to approach. His sharp stare was still there, but the lines around his eyes showed the weight of more than just battles, they showed the weight of years. He didn't reach out his hand. Instead, he took something out of the inside pocket of his jacket, a patch made from the same green fabric. But this time, there was another line under it. Guide Honorary Command. Nora took the patch silently. She didn't look away. Just like she had done years ago, she simply bowed her head. It was more than a thank you, it was an acceptance. Then the others came. Each of them left a short sentence behind. "You didn't just save us that day, you saved your own determination. If it weren't for you, we'd still be prisoners to protocol. You didn't teach us how to think, you taught us how to see." These weren't just words. Each one was heavy and honest, grown inside them over the years as a quiet kind of gratitude. Eventually, the crowd slowly began to break apart, but a group still lingered around the 10th row. Nora didn't get up. She didn't need to. For the first time, just being where she was meant something. To everyone who once tried to push her down, that chair had become a symbol of shame. But to Nora, it was just the beginning. Ethan leaned toward his mother. "Shall we go?" he asked. Nora nodded. She stood. But before they could walk away, a teacher approached. A middle-aged woman, with life written behind the lenses of her glasses. "I've seen you in the hallways so many times over the years," she said. "But I guess I never really saw you." Her voice cracked. "Thank you for your son. But even more, thank you for us." Nora didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because sometimes, the sentences built by a woman simply standing tall are better left unspoken. That week, the town was quiet. But it was a different kind of quiet. Not suffocating shaking, full of change. The school board called an emergency meeting. Topic: what had happened on graduation day. Principal Kent announced he would be stepping down. "I have personal goals," he said, but everyone knew the truth. The truth had been heard. Bellamy quietly withdrew from the family committee. No press release was made. But instead, a proposal came forward: create a new award. Name it the Maddox Recognition for silent service and unseen effort. It was accepted unanimously. But Nora wasn't invited to the ceremony. Because she wasn't just a name anymore. She was a presence. A living example of someone who had moved through the system without breaking it, only reshaping it. Whenever her name was mentioned, people would now pause and think. The events hit the internet. Ethan's speech, secretly recorded by a student, spread across social media. The comments piled up by the thousands. Women saying, "That could have been my mom." Young people saying, "I was in that back row too." Something had stirred, and that stirring was now being felt not just in the town but deep in the veins of the system itself. Ethan, meanwhile, became quieter. He started blogging at night, not about his mother's story, but about the things she had taught him. A leader's voice isn't followed, their direction is. Noticing the unseen is the greatest kind of learning. Those silenced the most carry the heaviest truths. The name of the blog was just one word: guide. Nora went back to her garage. Her jacket still hung there. The patch inside it was still in place. But now, she didn't touch it every day. Because respect, once earned, doesn't need to be proven again. There were new young people showing up. One morning, a kid came in holding an old motorcycle. "I know you won't hire me," he said, "but I need to get this thing running. I've got no other way to get to school." Nora handed him a wrench. "We'll get it running together," she said. "But first, learn to be quiet." The kid didn't understand. But a few days later, Nora said something. It all started with a chair. But it was never really about the chair. It was about what you don't let go of when they try to take it away. In the last week of June, along with the rising heat, a strange tension had begun to spread through town. It was as if the wind had changed direction, and the shadows had grown longer. Nora sensed it not from the sound of her car's engine, but from the rhythm of the silence around her. Everything was going a little too smoothly. And to her, that was a warning. Her same old workbench was still in the corner of the garage. One morning, she found a yellow envelope in the mailbox. No name on it, no stamp, just one sentence printed in plain type. "Files left open," screamed from inside the silence. Nora didn't open the envelope. She didn't need to. She recognized the sentence. She had heard it only once, years ago, in training camp, and never forgotten it. Seeing it again brought her right back to the moment she'd been expecting. At the end of that drill, one SEAL instructor had disappeared. Official reports called it an unrecorded resignation. But Nora knew that man hadn't just left. He had made an unseen choice. And he hadn't disappeared, he was waiting for someone who hadn't kept their promise. And that person was now near town. Ethan noticed the change in his mother. Her eyes were sending signals again. She was measuring light angles, pulling her chair back in the garage so she could hear footsteps, like it was about to become a battlefield. But no one had declared war yet. Late one night, Nora went outside. She didn't wear her jacket, but she put the patch in her pocket. She unlocked the hidden latch in the corner of the garage. Inside was a metal box. Only she knew the code. From it, she pulled out a rusty but still working special radio, old maps, and a worn photo. 6 men, one missing. His name wasn't written, but his face was still clear in Nora's mind. Joseph Madigan. Madigan wasn't part of the SEAL team, but during training, he was the one who questioned Nora's instincts the most. He had called her too weak, too soft. And during that final drill, yes, it had been a test, but Madigan had carried a real weapon. He was expelled from the program for refusing to stand down. Quietly, but he hadn't accepted it. The one who had stopped him was Nora, because childish ambition was more dangerous than military discipline. And now, this man had returned. One night, Ethan stayed up late in the kitchen. The lights were off, but his mom was still outside. He heard a car, but it wasn't her truck. Softer, newer. He couldn't see it from the window, but the smell of rotting metal hit his nose. And at that moment, he understood why his mom had double-locked the garage door every night for years. In the morning, his mother said nothing. But Ethan didn't stay quiet. "Who was that last night?" Nora didn't answer. "Mom, this isn't about graduation, is it?" She made eye contact. And this time, she spoke. "No, this is about someone who could ruin your life." "What do you mean?" "I stopped a man in the past. I didn't report it. Now he's come to silence me. We have to go to the police." Nora shook her head. "The police can't handle this. But someone else can." She pulled a small piece of paper from her pocket, handed it to Ethan. It had just 4 words. Hartley, 6. Old protocol. That night, Ethan decided to act. While his mom was sleeping, he opened the computer and searched those 4 words. He found nothing. But then he tried a flash drive he'd found in Nora's old trunk. Inside were encrypted documents, drone footage, and a voice recording. Hartley's voice. If this file's been opened, Nora is in danger. Madigan was erased from the system, but not in reality. The only one who ever stood up to him was her. Nora, you're not alone. And if this message is in Ethan's hands, listen, kid, sometimes you don't fire a bullet and still win the war. Ethan didn't sleep at all that night. In the morning, another engine was heard outside the garage. A silver SUV. Another vehicle pulled up beside it, and Hartley stepped out. Behind him stood 4 more men. We weren't called, he said, but the silence of our guide always finds us. Nora, finally, accepted she was not alone. The sun hadn't risen yet, but Nora was already awake. She didn't put on her jacket. Today, she didn't need to be protected by it. Someone who carries her own shadow no longer needs someone else's armor. She stood in front of the garage. Hartley and his team were already in position. They weren't holding weapons. They didn't need to. Because today wasn't about shooting anyone, it was about burying a lie quietly planted years ago. Ethan stood on the front step of the house, watching everything unfold. Just a few days ago, he had been a student. Now, he was about to learn the most important truth of his life. His mother wasn't just a mom, she was a writer of history. And that history was finally going to be read out loud. At 7:42 a.m., a vehicle appeared at the end of the dusty road. An old Jeep. Blacked out windows, no license plate. When it stopped, the hum of the engine cut off. Someone stepped out. Broad-shouldered, messy-haired, gray-eyed. His hands were in his pockets, but his face was alert. Joseph Madigan. His eyes found Nora immediately. After all these years, here we are again, he said. His voice hadn't changed. Cold, measured, shaped to hurt. We're not face to face, said Nora. I never moved from my place. No. You erased me from the system that day. You made them forget me. No, Joseph. You tried to write yourself above the system. And someone who noticed that stopped you. That made you angry. But that anger doesn't belong to you anymore. Madigan took a step forward. Hartley quietly shifted to the side, not to intervene, but to balance. This wasn't a raid. This was the uncovering of a truth. When I came, I thought I'd find you alone, said Madigan. I was wrong. As always. Nora didn't respond. But Ethan stepped forward. He came to stand beside his mother. They made eye contact. Nora didn't try to stop him. Ethan took one more step. He stood directly in front of Madigan. My name is Ethan Wagner, he said. And I don't know what you think you know about my mom. But I know this. I'm here because of her. I graduated. I spoke. I made a change. What did you do? Madigan smiled. You're proud of speaking? Ethan shook his head. No. I'm proud of being raised by someone who gave people something to talk about. There was silence. Not tense. Not full of understanding either. Just a moment when the past recognized itself. Madigan paused for a few seconds. Then he turned to Nora. Why didn't you report me? He asked. Nora answered. Because a courtroom wouldn't have silenced you. The only thing that could silence you was being forced to listen to yourself. And now here you are. A man stuck inside his own rage. She took a step forward. And Joseph, I forgive you. Everyone went quiet. The SEALs. Ethan. Even Madigan. That sentence didn't hit like a bullet, it shook like a vibration through bone. Madigan didn't back away, but his eyes filled with tears. No one may have seen those tears, but all Ethan could see was this. At that moment, his mother didn't just free the past. She freed herself too. Madigan turned back. He didn't make any threats. He didn't say a word. He got in the car and left. And he never came back. By the end of that summer, Ethan's blog had spread across the country. Newspapers wrote articles about Nora. But Nora never gave an interview. Hartley said just one thing in a radio program. Some heroes don't walk by shouting. They walk barefoot, leaving prints in the dirt. And those who see those prints, one day, they change their path. The town school board invited Nora to an awards ceremony. She didn't go, but Ethan did. He stepped on stage and simply said, My mother might still be sitting in that old chair, but you've changed how you look at that chair. And that's enough. At the end of the ceremony, one seat on stage was left empty. No name on it. But everyone knew that seat wasn't empty for Nora. One morning, while fixing a worn vest in the garage, Ethan came up beside her. Mom, he said, do you think people really change? Nora looked up. Her eyes drifted toward the sky. Some never do, she said. What about the others? The others, Nora murmured, tightening a bolt. They don't change. They learn to remember. And that day, she finally took out the honorary command patch from her jacket pocket. washed it, dried it, folded it, and for the first time, she hung it on the garage wall, made it visible, because she didn't need to hide it anymore. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to help be the voice of silent heroes.